Bishop, I'm extremely excited for today's show because we're going to be speaking about a truly fascinating topic that I didn't know anything about until very recently. How are you today, Bishop?
I am excited, Jason, on this Tuesday afternoon and on the 23rd of June here in the year 2020. I'm really excited about this brand new series that we're going to unpack this afternoon.
As am I. You know, we've been hearing little sort of whispers about this surrounding the George Floyd murder, this independent order of odd fellows. It struck me immediately, Bishop, because I had never heard of this at all until about January of this year. People who are regular viewers of Crowdsource the Truth might recall that I went to Norway with Charles Ortel in our years-long investigation into the bizarre shenanigans of the Clinton Foundation, a group I know that you're very interested in as well, Bishop. And what I noticed was right there near Parliament, there's like a Oslo, Norway Parliament building. There is a pretty large square there, and the Odd Fellows have a huge building. And I noticed it, and I mentioned it to Charles Ortel, and he was aware of the Odd Fellows thing, but didn't really know all that much about it.
Yeah, I mean, and I think the average American, they've never heard of this secret society called the Odd Fellows Secret Society, which was conceived in England going back to the 1700s. And it's going to be fascinating as we begin to dissect their history from the 1700s even to today, what's happening in Minneapolis, Minnesota.
And just very quickly, if I could, Bishop, I'd like to show this to you. This is the Parliament building here in Oslo, Norway, and this is kind of like a government center. There's a lot of kind of fancy, expensive stuff going on around here. There was the, I think AXA insurance, or some big insurance company along here. And as we just sort of walked along this square, there was, well, why don't you begin and I'll find this and we can come back to it. But I know, oh wait, I think this is it right here, Bishop. Check this out. So we were waiting for a bus to go back to the hotel. And I just noticed this building. Can you see that on the screen share?
Yes, sir.
Odd Fellow Ordenen. So, I mean, I guess that's Norwegian for Odd Fellows Order, but they've got their 3 chain link flag flying. I mean, this is not some, ancient building that they've abandoned. They've got these, would you call these frescoes, Bishop? These sort of sculptures here on the stone?
It's all a schematical, historical ley line of the Odd Fellow Secret Society. And you notice those 3 chain links,
yeah,
which is insignia of the Odd Fellows Secret Society. And those 3 chains represent friendship, love, and truth. But those are just code words that are covering the true meaning of those names that have everything to do with what's going on today. And those 3 chains also are interconnected with the Atlantic slave trade. So it's going to be mind-blowing today as we begin to unpack this.
Absolutely. And before we get too far into it, Bishop, I always like to let our viewers know, because everyone's become so fascinated with the series that you've brought to Crowdsource the Truth. People can follow you and listen to your radio show on liferadionj.com/Gaiters. And if they are within the signal of 92.9 FM, they can get it there as well. Now, I'm frustrated yet again, Bishop, because each week I am making good efforts to try to get our live streams to simulcast on the Global Spiritual Revolution Radio and Media Group YouTube channel. But for some reason, it's very uncooperative. I'll have to post that later. We've got some people waiting over there, and certainly viewers of Crowdsource the Truth are going to want to subscribe to the Bishop's YouTube channel to stay up on all of his teachings, his lectures, and the various appearances he's making throughout social media. The other thing I want to remind people about, Bishop, is that they can actually support the global spiritual revolution by going to paypal.me/GSRR Media Group and making a financial contribution. People can also support this show on patreon.com/crowdsourcethetruth and subscribestar.com/crowdsourcethetruth. Take it away, Bishop.
Thank you so much, Jason. We're going to begin to unpack this very powerful new series. And again, Jason, I thank God for you calling me the other night and just directing me going this way. So this new series, Volume 1, is entitled The Odd Fellowship of a Secret Society. Again, The Odd Fellowship of a Secret Society. So to understand even today what's going on in Minneapolis, Minnesota, and around this country, we have to examine a very unknown and untaught secret society called the Odd Fellows or the Odd Fellowship Secret Society. So the etymology of the term odd, capital O-D-D, it comes from a Norse interpretation of the word Oda-Tala, capital O-W-A, capital T-A-L-A, which means double triangle. So the term odd, right? Or the term or the phrase odd man out. So that term odd means double triangle. Thereby we get the triple chain link on that flag that you showed a couple of minutes ago, okay? Yep. So then to understand the odd fellowship, let's examine the term odd. So it means a double triangle. Now, as a side note, when you type in artifacts of slavery or Reuters.com, artifacts of slavery, it shows a neck brace that many of the indigenous Africans wore. That was a double triangle. And this is where we get the term odd, okay? Whoa. And so many of the, there you go, right there. So it has a double triangle with the circle in the middle.
This goes around someone's neck?
Yes, it goes around someone's neck, absolutely. Wow. And so it has a four-prong dimensionality, which we call odd. It is a Norse-British word signifying double triangle, okay? Now, the term here, odd man out, and that's a powerful picture there, Jason. So then odd man out, the origin of that term came from one of the most powerful books I have ever read concerning breaking the chains of psychological slavery by one of America's most powerful clinical psychologists, Dr. Naeem Akbar. So he says in chapter 5 concerning that term odd man out that goes back to the early part of the 1400s, where slaves were extracted or thrown overboard because of sickness and diseases. So that term odd man out comes from the Atlantic slave trade system going back to the 1400s of slave masters and owners of slave ships would extract and throw over sick and diseased slaves into the sea. That's where we get the term odd man out. So most of the slave owners going up until the Emancipation Proclamation in 1863, and then 2 years later, through the ratification of the 13th Amendment in 1865, most of the slave owners around the world were a part of the Odd Fellowship Secret Society. So we're going to bring that out later on in more detail. So odd. So to understand this odd fellow or fellowship secret society, let's examine the term fellowship. So the term fellow then comes from the Arabic interpretation, fella, capital F-E-L-L-A-H, which means property owner. Again, the Bible says, my people destroy for the lack of knowledge. So the term fellow, or its origin, comes from that Arabic interpretation, which means property owner. And then the word ship, capital SHIP, comes from the Javanese original term, ship, which means transportation, or it also means three links. Now, remember at the beginning of today's broadcast, you showed that flag, okay, of that powerful secret society in Norway, okay,
Yeah.
of those three links. Now, the secret societies will tell you today that those three links represent friendship, love, and truth. But in actuality, Jason, those terms, friendship, love, and truth, are only the cover for the original interpretation of the insignia of the Odd Fellowship Secret Society. So then, those three links simply represent a master mason, a mark master mason, and a holy royal arch. Again, Master Mason, friendship, Master Mason, love, and the Holy Royal Ark, that's truth. So then, I'm going to show you numerous of pictures this afternoon of people like John Wilkes Booth, who was a part of the Odd Fellowship Secret Society.
Really?
That their right hand, yes, is in his jacket pocket, the entire Booth bloodline. And not to get ahead of us, Jason, that's not even their real last name. Their actual last name is Botha, capital Botha. So I don't want to get ahead of myself, but I'm kind of laying this foundation in order for your listeners to understand what's going on today. We have to look at the background of this Odd Fellowship Secret Society, the Odd Fellowship of a Secret Society. So the odd, which means double triangle, that neck brace around the neck of an indigenous African slave. Okay, this is according to Breaking the Chains of Psychological Slavery by Dr. Naim Akbar. Okay, and so that term odd or odd man out goes back to the global Atlantic slave trade, where the slave masters of ships would toss African people, men, women, and babies who were sick overboard. That term is called odd man out. So many times we say words and we don't know the origination of where those words came from as we're talking about the Odd Fellowship of a Secret Society. Then the term fellow means property owner, okay, just like the term Black Lives Matter. Matter means a chemical property compound. Fellow, then the word ship, okay? So then the Odd Fellowship was created in England in the early 1700s. Now, the term Odd Fellowship, that represents a secret society of men and women who were excommunicated, Jason, from the original Scottish Rite and York Rite secret societies going back to 1666. And it was some of the Odd Fellows as early as 1666 in London who had created the great 1666 London fire.
Oh.
These were so then these were the men who started that 1666 fire, 666 in London, England, in order to destroy the original Scottish Rite, York Rite order, in not just in England, but throughout Europe. And this is the Odd Fellowship of a Secret Society. Jump in anytime, Jason, if you see something. So then, in the early part of the 1700s, the Odd Fellowship had suffered during an era going up to 1799 of what the government of England or Great Britain passed, the era of Unlawful Societies Act. That's in 1799. So the era of Unlawful Societies Act was passed by the British Parliament of Great Britain in 1799 by William Pitt the Younger, who later became the Prime Minister of England. Okay, he was a conservative. So then the Conservative Republican Party in the Parliament, in the British government, wanted to destroy the secret societies of radicals, such as the Odd Fellowship Secret Society that came from the liberal parties within the British Parliament. So it sounds interesting. So then the Unlawful Secret Societies Act of 1799 also was called the Corresponding Societies Act, restricting the activities, Jason, of radical secret societies, okay, including the London Corresponding Secret Society that was birthed in 1792, or what is the London Corresponding Secret Society? That is the birth of what we call fake news. Fake news came from that secret society in 1792, the London Corresponding Society, that was birthed out of the Odd Fellowship Secret Society, as we are dissecting the Odd Fellowship of a secret society. So then the Odd Fellowship were members that were outcast from both the Scottish Rite Order and the York Rite Order. Why? Because a lot of these men and women were not in the Illuminati bloodline of those 9 families that goes back to as early as the 1400s. So many great Americans today, including FDR, you had 6 U.S. presidents, Jason, who were a part of the Odd Secret Society, okay? So then the Scottish Rite Order and the York Rite Order, or the Rosicrucians, capital Croix, right, had excommunicated these men and women. And as a side note, the Odd Fellowship Secret Society were heavily connected and financially backed by the Jacobite Secret Society through Stuart Jacob and the throne there in England. This goes back to the 1300s. So the Jacobite or the Sabbatean Frankish dynasty that were later be birthed subsidized financially the secret society that we call the Odd Fellowship Secret Society through the bloodline of Stuart Jacob. Now going back to the 17 in the 1800s. So then the Stuart Jacobite dynasty in the 17th and 18th century was a movement that supported the restoration of the House of Stuart to the British Empire. The bloodline of Stuarts will later be connected to the bloodline of both the Botha family, who became the Booth family, and the Wilkes family, who were married into the Botha bloodline. Jace, this is heavy here today as we are dissecting the Odd Fellowship of a secret society.
Absolutely, Bishop. And sorry to interrupt, but you know what I noticed when you bring up this House of Stuart, which I was totally unaware of, their coat of arms, it looks remarkably similar to that of the Rothschilds.
Isn't that interesting, Jason? Now, I'm glad that you brought that up because you hit another powerful nerve with me, as you always do, as we are dissecting the Odd Fellowship of a secret society. So the Jacobus Frankish dynasty bloodline goes back 2,000 years to Leo the Khazarian IV. Now, remember some weeks ago, I had brought up his name concerning the birth, of the Khazarian Empire, okay? So the bloodline, even today, through the Odd Fellowship Secret Society, goes back to Leo the IV, who had conquered and ruled the Byzantine Empire, going back from 750 to 780 BC, as we're talking about the Odd Fellowship of a secret society. And yes, that seal of the Frankish Jacobean Empire is similar to that of the Rothschild Baphomet system. Excellent, excellent point there, Jason. And so then the House of Stuart, a part of the British Empire, they wanted to rule the throne of the United Kingdom. So the origin of what we call Jacobus, which is a Latin term for James, they are of the bloodline going back 2,000 years ago to the Khazarian Empire out of present day Turkey. Okay. Huh. So then the first lodge in the history of the Odd Fellowship Secret Society, going back into 1712, was the first lodge. Now, as a side note, the term lodge, my friend, is interpreted from the Persian word, what we get the term incubi, capital INCUBI, which is not only a Persian term, but a Latin term. This is where we get the term incubation. So when they say, I belong to this lodge, they're saying, I belong to this incubation.
And what about incubus, Bishop?
Incubus, absolutely, which is also a demon in both Greek and Persian mythology. So you have incubi, a male demon that has sex with women during the night. And then you have succubi, capital SUCCUBI, which is a female demoness that has sex with men during their sleep. So, but the psyop of both incubi and succubi is a part of the spiritual dynamic of what we call the odd fellowship of this secret society. So the first lodge or incubation period, okay, was a part of the loyal, what we call the royal and the loyal Aristarchus Lodge. So the loyal Aristarchus Lodge, number 9, was destroyed in 1666 because of the Great London Fire that was started not by people of the Scottish Rite Order or even the York Rite Order, and not even the House of Stuart. It was some of these radical members through this odd fellowship secret society that they would rather destroy London, okay, than to work with those secret societies who had excommunicated them. Now, there's an interesting book, Jason, called The History of Freemasonry, Its Antiquities, Symbols, okay, volume 1, okay. And so it's by Dr. Robert Freake Gould, capital F R-E-K-E, Gould, or Gold, capital G-O-U-L-D-A. Excellent, excellent historian. He talks about that the lodge number 1, okay, the very first lodge in the history of the odd fellowship, the Loyal Aristarchus Lodge, number 1, okay, in 1666, also going back to 1666, that was destroyed by rogue members of not the Scottish Rite Order or the York Rite Order, but they were destroyed by rogue members of the Odd Fellows Secret Society, okay, as we're talking about this secret society today, which is very, very unknown to the average American. Now, as a side note, the 1666 Great Fire of London took place on September the 2nd in 1666 by Thomas Farynor, capital F-A-R-Y-N-O-R, who was one of those rogue members of the Odd Fellowship Secret Society. So the fire took place in his bakery shop, okay, which was a pretext to destroy not just London, but the entire system of Freemasonry in London, England. More specifically, Jason, with the Scottish Rite and York Rite order because he was excommunicated from those orders because he was not of the royal bloodline. Okay, as we are dissecting for your listeners the odd fellowship of a secret society.
I'd like to share
Also,
something with you quickly, Bishop.
go right ahead.
Well, David Hawkins and I traveled to London in, the earlier portion of this year, and we noticed that there's this big, giant obelisk here, which commemorates the Great Fire of London. And
Wow.
This monument is designed by Robert Hooke, FRS, in consultation with the Christopher Wren. It was built 1671 to 1677 on the site of St. Margaret's Fish Street Hill to commemorate the Great Fire of London in 1666. And the other interesting thing about this, Bishop, is right down the street from this monument, you remember, I don't know, this happened kind of like the end of 2019. There was that guy who got attacked with a narwhal husk or a tusk.
Oh, yeah. Yes,
Remember
sir.
they had that, there was like some kind of lawyer having a meeting with a bunch of people who had been released from prison, and
Right.
he was stabbed to death right in front of this fishmonger's hall, which is literally right across the street from that obelisk commemorating the fire. It's right in here. So and then this building right here is number 33, and it contains the bank Wells Fargo. Somehow I just got away from it.
That is so interesting. And as a side note, you hit another nerve with me. That's why you're a great host, Jason. As we are dissecting for your powerful listeners, the odd fellowship of a secret society, the creation of the Temple Bar in London, England. And as a side note, the Temple Bar is the only piece of real estate on this earth that's not controlled by Washington, D.C., the military industrial complex. And that's not controlled by the city of London, the financial market of the financial industrial complex, and it's not controlled by the Vatican, right? The world religious power. And so it was the engineers from the Odd Fellowship Secret Society who helped build the Temple Bar. That's a side note as we are dissecting the origins of this unknown secret society, the Odd Fellowship of a Secret Society. Jump in anytime, Jason. So,
how do you like the address of Wells Fargo here, Bishop? It's number 33 King George Street.
That is not by accident, Jason. Nothing is by random when it comes to the global Luciferian deep state. The number 33, and we've been telling each other, and you know this one about this age, Jason, including your powerful listeners, that no Black person on this earth can attain a 33rd and 1/2 degree with any type of free Masonic order. Okay, only non-Black people have that right, according to the bloodline, to attain a 33rd and 1/2 degree. Black people can only attain a 33rd degree status. But again, that address, those coordinates are strategically built in place by this Luciferian Baphomet Luciferian system, Jason, as we are dissecting the Odd Fellowship of a Secret Society. And so the Odd Fellow Secret Society was split into the Order of Patriotic Odd Fellows in Southern England, okay, and then by William III of England, okay, and then split again into the Ancient Order of Odd Fellows in Northern England and Scotland, favoring the House of Stuart, whose bloodline goes through both the Botha family, whose name is Booth today, and the Wilkes family, okay, who intermarried into the bloodline of John Wilkes Booth. I'm going to explain that. So then, the House of Stuart is interconnected as we are dissecting for your powerful listeners, the Odd Fellowship of a Secret Society. So then, as we dissect this, was a statesman, a part of the English Parliament, who was an odd fellow. His name was John Wilkes. Okay, he had created the present day radical system within England. Okay, it was the bloodline of John Wilkes. Now, according to the book, the memoirs of by Asia Booth, the sister of John Wilkes Booth. Okay, a sister's memoir by Asia Booth Clark that was edited by Terry Alford, capital Alford. Excellent picture there, Jason. Her brother, she said, John Wilkes Booth, his real last name is not Booth, it's Botha, capital Botha. Now, when we examine what the Botha bloodline goes back to, we will better understand the complexity of this odd fellowship of a secret society. So then, John Wilkes Booth, the assassin of President Abraham Lincoln. Now, when you go online, not just according to Asia Booth's memoir, okay, a sister's memoir by Asia Booth Clark concerning John Wilkes Botha or Booth, also type in the Lincoln Conspiracy, Part 1, reformation.org/Lincoln, okay? So the Lincoln Conspiracy, Part 1, or reformation.org, okay, which they received their information from Asia Booth's book, okay, concerning her family and her brother, John Wilkes Booth. So then the Lincoln Conspiracy, Part 1, reformation.org/Lincoln-conspiracy-Part 1.
Sorry, Bishop. Wait a minute. You're going too fast for me. So the Lincoln Conspiracy, Part 1, and what was it? Yes. Reclamation?
Yeah, and so the link is reformation.org. Yes, sir. /Lincoln-conspiracy-part 1, the number 1, then .html. So the information comes from the Asia Booth memoir book concerning not just her family bloodline, but her brother, John Wilkes Booth, okay, who was hired by an attorney by the name of Simon Wolfe to execute President Abraham Lincoln. Well, who was Simon Wolfe? Simon Wolfe was an attorney, okay, for B'nai B'rith, which is the Anti-Defamation League. Nothing. Listen, they do great work today, but my assignment is to expose the Odd Fellowship Secret Society, because Simon Wolfe, who headed the Virginia State chapter of B'nai B'rith, that they were designed to be a secret society. They wanted to extract Abraham Lincoln from life because Lincoln was stopping the international bankers and the financiers of the Rothschilds from taking over the money supply in the United States of America. And so on
Bishop, real quick, just two things. So B'nai B'rith, is it the same thing as the ADL? I understood B'nai B'rith is always trying to get Jewish people to go to Israel. They, like when I was in Hebrew school, they would be like, hey, go on this trip. And there's this like birthright where if you're Jewish, you can just go to Israel. And if you go through the B'nai B'rith thing, you become like a citizen of Israel and you got to go into the army. I never did it, but I'm not sure they're exactly the same. We should look into that more. I don't know that much about it. And this next thing may fall into the category of stupid, but we recently had another guest who was speaking about how propaganda is most effective when it's explained as entertainment. And when you mention Botha, again, this is maybe stupid, but I think about Star Wars. The Bothan spies were often referred to in the Star Wars universe. They had stolen the plans to the Death Star, but we never actually saw them until like last year. But that was Botha.
And again, and that's not by accident. And great point that you made about B'nai B'rith. See, B'nai B'rith is a totally different segment or section from the Anti-Defamation League. The Anti-Defamation League came much later on. They're the legal side that protects B'nai B'rith from the power of anti-Semitism. And they do great work today. I don't have a problem with them. And this is not an indictment against B'nai B'rith or the Anti-Defamation League. This is an indictment on Simon Wolf, who was a member of the Virginia State chapter of the Odd Fellowship Secret Society, including his protege, John Wilkes Botha Booth. Now, remember, there was a Prime Minister, P.W. Botha, of South Africa, who was the Prime Minister of apartheid South Africa between 1978 to 1984. P.W. Botha comes from that bloodline that goes back to the great-great-grandfather of John Wilkes Booth, Ricardo Botha Booth.
Wow.
All were a part of the Odd Fellowship Secret Society. So then, to understand what's going on today, especially at that address of 3003 27th Avenue South, Minneapolis. Okay,
now, we haven't told people about that yet, Bishop. This is a very important part of today's show.
Absolutely, and we're going to tie this background into what's going on in Minneapolis, and especially at that address 3003.
Should we take a minute to explain exactly what that place is?
That is the order of what we call the Secret Society of the Odd Fellowship. Now, that is an offshoot of the original Odd Fellowship, okay? That fellowship at 3003 27th Avenue South is the Black version, or the African-American version, okay, of the Odd Fellowship Secret Society. Now, George Floyd's tattoo that you and I have been talking about multiple times, Order Out of Chaos, which has a double-headed winged bird. That's one of the symbols of the Odd Fellowship Secret Society. Now, I'm not saying that George Floyd was a member of that lodge at 3003 South 27th Avenue. But we must connect these dots in order for us to understand who and what is the Odd Fellowship, and are they behind the rioting and the chaos that we see, not just in Minneapolis, but around the country. And I'm going to come to how a former slave master created the national order, okay, of the Odd Fellowship Secret Society, which is a Black secret society that was created long before the Boule Secret Society. Now, the Boule Secret Society is the first Black Greek secret society, okay? But there was a secret society before them. I'll talk about them in the next 10 to 15 minutes as we're dissecting the Odd Fellowship of a secret society.
Now, let me jump in for just a minute, if I may, Bishop, because there's something I've been just itching since the weekend to share with you. I kept it as a surprise.
Yes.
You ready for that? So I was watching this really well done documentary on YouTube from a channel called In Pursuit of Truth. I think a lot of people have probably seen this. This was a documentary all about George Floyd. It was called The Weathermen 3. And, you know, Bishop, you and I have spoken quite a bit about the Weather Underground and everything that they're up to. And I found this documentary very informative. I think people should check out In Pursuit of Truth and watch this Weathermen 3. But it led me to look into this 3003 27th Avenue South in Minneapolis. And I went onto Google Earth, as regular viewers know I am frequently doing. And of course, we see the entrance to the Independent Order of Odd Fellows. But the thing that's so interesting to me is that there's this check cashing business in the building as well. The owner of this building owns the whole compound. We've got Ace check cashing in here, and Bishop, the owner, or I should say the CEO of Ace check cashing is a guy named Shipowitz. So you were mentioning Ship earlier. That's very interesting. But the most interesting thing is, look at this, Bishop. Nuevo Rodeo Restaurant, okay? And this thing says Lodge number 113 right underneath the Nuevo Rodeo Restaurant sign, AD 1909. I think that means it was built in 1909. But we've got this check cashing business here. I mean, it seems like it's almost part of the restaurant. At least the sign for the restaurant is right there. And as we come around here, we see some of the other businesses. We've got integrated staffing solutions. I wonder who they're hiring and for what purpose. We've got Town Talk Diner that I don't particularly know anything about. Then we have El Nuevo Rodeo Restaurant, which I don't know why the sign is all the way on the corner over there. There's an Ethiopian vegan kind of health food restaurant here, and we know there's a huge Somali refugee population here in Minneapolis, in part due to a bill passed by Ted Kennedy and sleepy, creepy, sniffing Uncle Joe Biden that allowed refugees from Somalia to become citizens in only 5 years. And of course, one of the people who took advantage of that program became a police officer and is now the first police officer to be charged with murder in Minneapolis. We don't have to talk about him right now, but I wanted to show you this, Bishop. You see this van here?
Yes, sir.
This is parked right there. It's 95.7 FM, and it says La Raza right on it here.
Yes.
And it shows the names of all these different bands, but then this one, we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 bands on there, but only this one has its logo blurred out. The rest of them you can see. So there's a lot of interesting stuff.
Yes, and Jason, if you can go back to that lodge number, okay? Now that La Raza station was burnt down by the rioters, and the owner was also the former owner of the El Nove Rodeo nightclub, where Geore Floyd worked as a bouncer and Derek Chauvin worked as a security guard for 17 years, okay? And so the former owner is a Dominican woman by the name of Maya Santa Maria. And this is where we get the term Santeria, and she's heavily connected to the life of Kobe Bryant and Vanessa Bryant, because Kobe Bryant in the Los Angeles Lakers used to go and play against the Minnesota Timberwolves once a year and would frequent nightclub. Now, I'm not blaming her.
Kobe Bryant frequented the nightclub?
Yes. When Kobe Bryant and played for the Los Angeles Lakers during his tenure as a Laker, they would travel to Minneapolis once a year during the regular season to play against the Minnesota Timberwolves and would frequent that nightclub, not on every trip, but there've been multiple. What's that?
It looks like a dump. I'm surprised a famous rich guy would go there.
And many times they go to these dumps and holes in the wall in order to hide themselves from the public. They would not want to go to a high class, club. You would think that they would go to a high class club. But and again, I'm not blaming Miss Santa Maria. That term Santa Maria means Santeria. But that Nove nightclub, and then you have that Nove Rodeo restaurant. Okay. Yeah. Now, there, when you're talking about the IOOF, okay. Now, you had said that this international order, okay, of Odd Fellows, okay. Now, that is the African American version that will later be created as the Grand United Order of Odd Fellows, that was created by a former slave owner, Thomas Wildey, okay?
Right.
Capital Wildey. Well, he was the Grand Master, okay, of both the Grand United Order of Odd Fellows, which is an African-American secret society, an offshoot of the Odd Fellows Secret Society, okay, and the International Order of Odd Fellows, there at 3003 27th Avenue South. So again, I'm going to say something else because you see, Jason, this is what you do. You get me started here, and I thank God for you as we're dissecting this brand new series, The Odd Fellowship of a Secret Society. Now, for African Americans who are caught up in this Juneteenth celebration that they celebrate every year on the 19th of June. Why? Because going back to June the 19th, 1865, in Galveston, Texas, a Union soldier, and a general, General Gordon Granger, who was a member of the Odd Fellows
Wow.
Secret Society, according to Asia Booth and her book on the Asia Booth memoirs in chapter 5, that Gordon Granger, who had given that proclamation, okay, that President Abraham Lincoln had signed, the Emancipation Proclamation, 2 years prior in 1863, and then 2 years later, the ratification of the 13th Amendment, thereby abolishing slavery. Gordon Granger was a member of the Odd Fellowship Secret Society, a British secret society, but yet he's an American general. He gave that decree that not all Black men, women, children, babies were to be set free. He said, and notice the language, all slaves were to be set free. In other words, you're still a slave. Why didn't he just say all Africans or people of African descent, okay, or all Black people are free? No, he says all slaves are free. You're freed from the legality of serving a slave master, but you're still a slave to yourself psychologically. We have to examine words, Jason, as we are dissecting the Odd Fellowship of a Secret Society. So then Gordon Granger, according to Asia Book in her memoirs, was eventually arrested for child pedophilia.
Gordon Granger was?
Yes. Gordon Granger had a love for little boys and little girls, but this is the man that Black people look up to as they celebrate Juneteenth. Okay, the 19th of June, each and every. Jason, my job is to connect the dots as we are dissecting this unknown secret society, the Odd Fellowship of a Secret Society. Excellent links that you just showed there for the last couple of minutes. Now, back to the Lincoln conspiracy, okay? So then there was an attorney, a man by the name of Ricardo Botha, okay, out of Spain. This is also information that comes from the book, the memoir of Asia Booth, the sister of John Wilkes Booth, whose real name is John Wilkes Botha, okay? So Ricardo Botha, alias Robert Booth, okay, the great-great-grandfather of John Wilkes Booth, okay? So then the great-great-grandfather of John Wilkes Booth, Ricardo Botha, his grandfather and his great-great-grandfather were excommunicated by Queen Isabella going back during the 1400s, in which we call the Spanish Inquisition, okay? And as a sign of Christopher Columbus, that killer, he was of Khazarian blood. Another topic for another day. So Ricardo Botha, a.k.a. Booth, okay, went to Portugal, Spain, around 1760, and changed his name to Robert Booth, okay, which his real name was Robert Botha, okay? Robert Booth, the great-great-grandfather of John Wilkes Booth, okay, was a rich slave labor owner. He had mines throughout Mexico. I'm talking about the great-great-grandfather of John Wilkes Booth. So John Wilkes Booth, his great-great-grandfather, Ricardo Botha Booth, was an attorney out of Madrid, Spain, who moved to Lisbon, Spain, okay? Now, Ricardo Botha had a son by the name of Robert Botha Booth. These are members of the Odd Fellowship Secret Society through the bloodline of John Wilkes Booth. So then Robert Botha Booth was the son of an attorney, Ricardo Botha Booth, And the family went to London, England, Jason, in the late 1700s. So then Robert Botha Booth, okay, the son of Ricardo Botha, became a silversmith. So there's a great distinction between a blacksmith who creates iron versus a silversmith that creates silver. Now, as a side note, as we're dissecting, this is a powerful teaching today concerning the history of this odd fellowship secret society, or the odd fellowship of a secret society. So then, when we, as a side note, go into the biblical paradigm in Genesis chapter 3, verse 7, after Adam and the woman fall into sin, then they create for themselves aprons, capital Aprons. Now, the apron is connected to the logo of the Masonic order, which is also the insignia of Gmail. So then in Genesis 3 and 7, they made for themselves aprons to hide their corruption. Let me say this again. They chose aprons, and we're talking about not just the global Masonic order, okay, in the Odd Fellowship Secret Society, in the Scottish Rite Order, in the York Rite Order. So the Odd Fellowship Secret Society takes their doctrine, also going back 6,000 years. There you go.
So that is the Gmail logo. That's unbelievable.
Yes, absolutely, my friend. That is the Gmail logo.
It looks just like it.
Yes. Excellent picture there, my friend. And so in Genesis 3 and 7, they covered Adam and then Eve. Adam is the AM of the morning. Eve is the PM of the evening. Another topic for another day. So they made themselves aprons to cover their corruption. This is the history of the Odd Fellowship Secret Society. That's also in the book of Geore. Now, for your biblical historical students, the book of Geore was one of those 45 books that were extracted from the original canon of what we call the Bible. Why? Because of Constantine. Another topic for another day. So then that silversmith, from a biblical standpoint, the Bible talks about the term Tubal-Cain, capital Tubal, Cain. Now, the term Tubal-Cain is in Genesis chapter 4, verse 22. So Tubal-Cain was a man that was both blacksmith and a silversmith, a man of great articulation when it comes to building the Masonic schematical order. So Tubal-Cain, it means a dealer in silver. Now, as a side note, Jason, I'm not teaching race when I'm about to say, but the color black is the foundational color of all colors. Let me say it again. I'm not teaching black supremacy or white supremacy or brown supremacy. I'm just dissecting for your listeners the odd fellowship of a secret society.
Are you ready to say wow, Bishop?
Why? Because the black,
wait. No, I got something to share with you that's going to make you say wow. Looking up this Tubal-Cain guy, who, by the way, looks like a werewolf. He's like some Brooklyn hipster or something with this beard. But there's another logo here associated with the Tubal-Cain that looks like an F in a blue circle that reminds me of Facebook.
That's right.
What is this?
Tubal-Cain, a face of the oh my, you're 2 steps ahead of me. Excellent. So that Tubal-Cain Facebook insignia is interconnected as we're talking about the odd fellowship of a secret society. Excellent point there, Jason. Stop me anytime if you see something. So then the color black is a foundational color that has produced every other color on the spectrum. This is not black supremacy or white supremacy. We're dealing with ethnicity. We're dealing, when we're talking about scientific research, not into pigmentation, into colors when we're talking about this odd fellowship. So the color black is the most dominant color, okay? But the recessive color is white, which is birthed and conceived from the foundational black color. Now, I don't want black people to be running around thinking that they are, superior to white people. That's not what Bishop is saying. So to expose the secret society, what we call the Odd Fellowship secret society, we have to expose that. Tubal-Cain, excellent research there, Jason, in connection to the Facebook logo. Tubal-Cain also means two-ball cane, okay? So Tubal-Cain, which means Gnostic warrior, okay? Notice the thumbs up on the Tubal-Cain, thumbs up.
Wow.
Also the Facebook insignia.
Wow.
A person approving a post. Listen. So then Mark Zuckerberg is not an idiot, okay? Dustin Moskovitz are not idiots. They know the history of not only global Masonic orders and the science of Tubal-Cain, but they know the theology of the Odd Fellowship Seeker Society, okay? Now, back to the bloodline of the Botha Foundation, the Botha family. So Robert Botha Booth, all a part of not just Scottish Rite, the Masonic order, but they are a part of this odd fellowship of a secret society. So then Robert Botha, the son of Ricardo Botha, now his son, the son of Robert Botha, is John Botha, or Booth, who followed his father's craft of being a silversmith. Now, notice that term craft as in Tubal-Cain in Genesis 4:22. And this is what the Masonics, these Masonic demons look at, not just in the Scottish Rite order, in the York Rite order, in the Boulay Secret Society, but the secret society, which is called the Odd Fellowship Secret Society. So John Botha followed the craft. We're talking about witchcraft, the craft of his father, Robert, being a silversmith, being a creator of what we call silver. This is where we get the term jewelry, okay? Capital Jewry. Nothing wrong with that, okay? As we are dissecting the psyop of this unknown secret society, the Odd Fellowship Secret Society. So quickly here, John Botha later becomes a free thinker, being a part of the Odd Fellowship Lodge in Clerkenwell, England, capital Clerkenwell, Clerkenwell, England. So Clerkenwell, England, John Booth leads the craft of his father as a silversmith to become a politician in the Parliament of the United Kingdom. So John Wilkes, from his mother's side, Wilkes, okay? And the term Wilkes comes from the root term wilk, capital I-L-K, which means a crafter or a craft on a stage. Now, remember, the family of John Wilkes Booth were actors on a stage. And this is from the book, This One Mad Act, okay, by Dr. Robert Forster on page 10. Now, quickly here, before we get into the secret society in Minneapolis. So then John Wilkes, the crafter Booth, okay, and Richard Booth. Now, Ricardo Booth, the great-grandfather of John Wilkes Booth, is the father of John Wilkes, okay, the politician in the Parliament of the United Kingdom. Now, the Booth dynasty, Jason, had financially supported the British Empire during the American Revolution. The family of John Wilkes Booth, his father, okay, Junius Brutus Booth, okay, in that bloodline, going back to Ricardo Botha from Lisbon, Portugal, and Spain, financially backed not the Americans on the American side of the American Revolution, but supported the British Empire.
Wow.
These are the progenitors of John Wilkes Booth, who took out Abraham Lincoln.
Why do they say he's an actor? It seems like these guys are pretty busy for actors.
Exactly. Isn't that interesting? That
Well,
is
but you know
just
what?
yeah.
It also,
Go
Bishop,
right.
it makes me think about all these people on Twitter today. Like Alyssa Milano somehow thinks she's in Congress or something. I mean, she's got to be the stupidest person I know, or I don't know her, but that I'm aware of. And she's tweeting all the time. She's an actor.
Yeah, and these are useful idiots. Okay, these are people who she can't even act. She hadn't made a good movie in 55 years. Okay, and then all of a sudden, these people are experts on policy and politics. Okay, Hollywood has already destroyed themselves. Okay, they are not relevant as we're talking about this unknown secret society, the Odd Fellowship of a secret society. Excellent point that you made there concerning Melissa Milano. Okay, she's nothing but a witch and a Jezebel. Another topic for another day.
She was in a show about being a witch.
Yeah, exactly. And these people are showing you and I, Jason, who they are. Okay. Now, the family background of John Wilkes Booth, the Botha Empire or bloodline, not only supported the British Empire during the American Revolution, but they also were a part of the Jacobite Rebellion in 1745. Whereas the Botha Empire, who once supported the Jacobite Empire, had conspired to destroy it in 1745. So then John Wilkes was a member of the Royal Society in England in 1749. Okay, so as we move forward here, now remember at the beginning of today's show that you showed the flag of the three links, which is the insignia of the Odd Fellow Secret Society. Now, they would tell you, Jason, that it represents love and unity and all that other crap. It doesn't. It actually represents three dimensions. A master mason, a man or a woman that puts their right hand inside of their jacket pocket. 2, the marked master mason. And 3, the Holy Royal Arch Master Mason. That's what those 3 links represent, okay? And these were the backers of the Atlantic slave trade as well. I'm not teaching victimhood. I'm just revealing the origins of this unknown secret society, the Odd Fellowship Secret Society. Now, the son of John Wilkes, man, this gets deep here now, Jason. The son of John Wilkes Botha, his name was Junius Brutus Botha, who became an aristocratic actor in England. Okay, so Junius Brutus Botha gave birth to a son by the name of John Wilkes Booth. So then John Wilkes Booth and his father, Junius Booth Botha, were actors, Shakespearean stage trained actors. Okay. Now, Junius Botha, the father of John Wilkes Booth, was born in St. Pancras, which is a section of London, England. Okay. Junius was a part of the Odd Fellowship Lodge in St. Pancras, London. So his son, John Wilkes Booth, or Botha, the one that assassinated President Abraham Lincoln, okay, during the month of April in 1865 at Ford's Theater. And my question is, where was President Lincoln's detail, his security detail? Where were they? We'll talk about that in the next 15 minutes. So then, now as a side note, there is a man, another Booth, whose real name is Botha, who is related to John Wilkes Booth. His name was William Booth Botha, who was the creator, Jason, of the Salvation Army. Now, if you notice the Salvation, and just type in the Salvation Army, MUSE, capital MUSEE, Protestant. So the Salvation Army, MUSE, capital MUSEE, Protestant, or museprotestant.org. It shows a photo of William Booth with his right hand in his jacket pocket. Oh, yes. He is a high-level master mason of the Odd Fellowship Order.
Also has a crazy beard.
Has a crazy beard as well. The Salvation Army, okay, just like B'nai B'rith, started out as a secret society. Now, Salvation Army does great work. B'nai B'rith and the Anti-Defamation League, they do great work, okay? I am an advocate against anti-Semitism. I have no problem with them today. But the problem I have is with the people who are making these organizations look bad in their past, Jason, as we're talking about this origin of the Odd Fellowship secret society. So William Booth being a blood relative of the Botha family, like I said about 15 minutes ago, former Prime Minister of South Africa, P.W. Botha, who was an ardent supporter of apartheid. He was the PM of South Africa between 1978 to 1984. He's in the bloodline of John Wilkes Booth Botha, as we're talking about exposing this Odd Fellows secret society. Now Jason, it gets more scarier here. So to understand what is going on in Minneapolis today, we have to take a look at this unknown secret society, the Odd Fellowship of Odd Fellows secret society. So on the 14th of April in 1865, President Lincoln, along with his wife, they go to the Ford Theater, and all of President Lincoln's security detail, okay, they're paid off according to Asia Booth, the sister of John Wilkes Booth, in her book, The Memoirs of Asia Booth Clark, that the security detail that was supposed to be protecting President Abraham Lincoln, they were paid off by Simon Wolf, who was the attorney for B'nai B'rith, the state of Virginia chapter for B'nai B'rith. Now, Jason, can you do me a quick favor? Sure. Look up the seal of the state of Virginia. And again, look up the seal on Wikipedia for the state of Virginia. And it will show that Latin term, okay, sic semper tyrannis. Oh, the left foot on the chest near the neck of this individual. So at the bottom is sic semper tyrannis, okay? That was the words that John Wilkes Booth declared after he shot President Lincoln in the back of the head. So again, I'm just tying these connections.
But what does it mean, Bishop?
Well, that term, sic semper tyrannis, it simply means thus always to tyrants. Thus, capital T-H-U-S, thus always to tyrants.
Oh, now, Bishop, look at this. Wait a minute. This is, whoever it is standing on this guy's neck.
Who does that remind you of? George Floyd.
Yes. And
Jason
has this giant sword sticking up, just like at the African burial ground in Foley Square.
And just like the sword of the 1st Battalion U.S. Army Psychological Operation, that sword. Yes. And at the bottom was that twisted seal that represents the foundation of the Central Intelligence Agency in their seal. It's all connected, going back not just to the Scottish Rite Order and the York Rite Order, but this unknown secret society of the Odd Fellows secret society.
But so Bishop, whose crown is this? The guy on the ground?
Yes, that is the guys, that the crown that you, excellent detail, Jason, that belongs to the guy that becomes subservient to his enemy that's above him. The secret society is looking at George Floyd. Jason, besides that, okay, I don't want to get ahead of myself. Oh my
Well,
God!
but there's one other thing I want to point out, Bishop. Look at this thing on the guy's. I mean, I guess it's the shadow, but this is a pretty primitive drawing. It doesn't have too much shading, and it's not the same color as his hair, so it's not like a beard exactly, but it's this kind of almost lightning bolt. And I want to just go back for 1 second to Minneapolis, if we can, to show you something interesting, because I'm incredibly suspicious of this check cashing business that was inside the same complex as Nuevo Rodeo restaurant, because it also burned down. I called there today and it redirected me to another one of their offices elsewhere in Minnesota, and it burnt down. So we know that George Floyd is accused of using a counterfeit $20 bill. We know that the U.S. Customs and Border Protection seized almost $1 million worth of counterfeit $1 bills. I was trying to think who would bother, but look at this thing going across the A. It's almost like a lightning bolt, kind of similar to that guy's face. The A is kind of like a pyramid. The guy who's the CEO is Shipowitz. And it occurred to me, Bishop, if you go to a check cashing place, it's probably because, you have a job at I don't know, Target or somewhere where they're just paying you every 2 weeks. And maybe some people don't have a bank account. They go to these check cashing places. They give them the check. They're charged a fee and then they get the money in cash. But when you work at these kind of jobs, when you do Social Security and tax and whatever, it's never like $400. It's going to be like, $387 or something. So they're going to give you a lot of singles. If you controlled a lot of check cashing businesses, you could be laundering a ton of money and basically stealing money from people by giving them counterfeit ones, and nobody would notice.
And Jason, you and I talked about, I believe, a week or two ago concerning the FBI, through the Department of Homeland Security, confiscated nearly $1 million worth of counterfeit money at the port of Minneapolis. Okay, now I have a source within the Minneapolis Police Department. Okay, now let me clear this up. I have a relative who is a cop, but I have not spoken to this relative in years, so it's not him. Let me make that clear. This is a contact, a friend of mine who is Nigerian. He's a pastor, right? So he's been sending me information. He is saying that the serial number on the $20 counterfeit bill that was served as the pretext to arrest George Floyd matched the serial numbers on those $1 million worth of counterfeit bills that came out of China.
And were published at 733.
Yeah, 733. But see, and it came out in the media, the local media in Minneapolis, the day after the death of Kobe Bryant on January the 27th. Now, again, Jason, can you do me a favor? Go back to that pyramid of that check cashing place. Now, to all of your listeners, now remember a few days ago, Nancy Jezebel Pelosi, okay, and 7 other Democratic congressmen put on a show kneeling down on their right knee now, Derek Chauvin. So Nancy Pelosi and not Adam Schiff, but Senator, what's the Jewish senator's name from New York?
Schumer,
thank you. Chucky Schumer and 7 other Democrats were kneeling down in the form of a pyramid. Now, when you said pyramid, there you go. So then these people kneeling down with Jezebel Pelosi as the head or the eye of this pyramid. Everything is symbology, Jason. It is not by accident that everyone is kneeling where they are. More than 7. Now, she's in front. It is a pyramid. More than 7 or 8 congressmen on the left. So, and they're wearing kente cloths. Okay. Again, Jason, they are pandering to Black America. They don't give a damn about George Floyd. This is all about a conservative effort to destroy Trump in the Constitution. Okay. So then they're in front of that statue. Okay. It is not by accident that she is the head or the eye of this pyramid, that the entire Democratic Party, those that are there with her in the lobby, okay, of the Capitol, that form is shaped like a pyramid. Okay. This is Sic Semper Tyrannis. Okay. This is the mindset that John Wilkes Booth had said after he assassinated President Abraham Lincoln, thus always to tyrants. This is the psyop of what's going on today in Minneapolis, Minnesota. So when you brought out that pyramid on that check cashing place, it hit a nerve with me. Okay. Now going
Wait, sorry,
back,
Bishop. Do you know who this guy is in the gold robe standing here in the visitor center? Who is this statue?
Looks like of Hawaiian descent. That looks like one of the statues, and we've got our brothers and sisters in Hawaii, okay, that are watching in Hawaii, okay. Send some information right now, and I might be wrong. It looks like a statue going back to a Polynesian statue going back hundreds or thousands of years to Hawaiian or Polynesian descent. But Jason, they could have did this in any parts of the Capitol, but it was staged, was set up with Nancy Pelosi as the eye of this pyramid, okay? Going down on one knee, disrespecting the life of George Floyd as we're dissecting, okay, this odd fellowship secret society, okay? And we're coming in, I'm almost done here. So then John Wilkes Booth, hired by Simon Wolf, an attorney for B'nai B'rith. Simon Wolf is the chairman of the Virginia State Odd Fellowship Secret Society out of Lynchburg, Virginia. And
what's
Lynchburg was named, Wolf, capital W-O-L-F, Simon Wolf. He had infiltrated the Lincoln administration, posing as President Lincoln's friend, but he was representing financial interests from the Rothschilds. They wanted Lincoln to give the financial system to them, who? The Rothschilds. And Lincoln would not do it. That's why he wanted to create the Greenbacks. They took him out because of that. And according to Asia Booth in her memoirs concerning her brother and her family, okay, that B'nai B'rith had paid off the security. And again, this is not against B'nai B'rith today. You have rogue people in every organization, Jason, who don't represent the interests of that organization. Just like
but there's something else, Bishop, because they're saying in here, and by the name also, this guy Simon Wolf, he's Jewish, but he's part of these Masonic lodges. I don't think you're supposed to do that if you're Jewish. He's either not Jewish or he's not a Mason.
Exactly. Well, remember last week you showed that video of this Weisberger paying off these young rioters.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, he doesn't represent the Jewish community, but he's making the Jewish community look bad. And this is a psyop concerning the origins of this odd fellowship secret society. Okay, but that seal of the state of Virginia is so powerful, Jason, as we're dissecting, as we're coming in this secret society called the Odd Fellowship. So again, Simon Wolf being a Odd Fellowship member, okay? Also, he was an attorney representing the Virginia State chapter of both the Odd Fellowship Secret Society out of Lynchburg, named after Willie Lynch, okay, and B'nai B'rith, okay? Simon Wolf, along with Judah Philip Benjamin, had created what we call the Ku Klux Klan. I won't go down that road because we talked about that many times. And so then this Latin term, Sic Semper Tyrannis, okay, that is also the words which are on the seal, Jason, of the 149th Fighter Squadron, okay, within our U.S. military. Sic Semper Tyrannis, the same words that John Wilkes Booth used after he assassinated President Abraham Lincoln. And so you notice here, Jason, if you type in three-knotted rope noose, or Sic Semper Tyrannis. Now, as we're coming in here, now again, When I'm saying at the beginning of today's broadcast, you showed in Norway, right, that office of the Odd Fellowship Secret Society and the flag of those three chains that are interconnected. That's also representing of that double golden triangle that was used on the necks of slaves, right? A double triangle. So six simple Tyrannus seal. That's not only the 149th Fighter Squadron seal, but type in three knotted rope noose or six simple Tyrannus. Okay. So they had also backed the post-Atlantic slave trade. Okay. Now, as a side note, the military order of St. George, if you can type in, Jason, the Order of St. George, okay, the neck badge, the Order of St. George. Now, it's going to get really uglier here now, Jason, as we're coming in. Or the neck amulet.
Is it this, the St. George Award?
There you go. Yes. So when I look at George Floyd, right, everything according to the psyop of the deep state is by design. Okay. So the military Order of St. George, okay, which is a neck badge, okay, which is one of the amulets, Jason, for the Odd Fellowship Secret Society, okay? And you notice on that amulet, okay, of St. George, on the top, it has three chains or circles. Now, remember, maybe not at that seal. When you look on, type in neck amulet dash St. George, neck amulet dash St. George, code K28. Okay, so neck amulet St. George dash code K28. That's on Mountain, which is mountainemblems.com, mountainemblems.com, okay, or neck amulet St. George code K28. Now, it shows three circles at the top, okay? Or type in capital MOUNTATHOS, Mount Thathos, capital MOUNTATHOS dash eShop, ESHOP.com, okay? So MOUNTATHOS dash ESHOP.com, and then type in neck amulet St. George, code K28. So remember George Floyd, everything is a psyop as we are dissecting, okay, the origins of the Odd Fellowship Secret Society. At the top, it shows three, okay, circles, those three chains, okay, the three links, which is the insignia of the Odd Fellowship Secret Society. Then they got three circles or chains, okay, on the right side, left side, and at the bottom of this amulet for St. George, okay? Now, again, you will have to think like the deep state is thinking, Jason. Now, besides the neck amulet of St. George, there is an award that Queen Elizabeth gives out, okay?
Bishop, I'm sorry, I'm not able to find it. I keep coming up with, it's not giving me what you're telling. Is this it?
Yeah, that's it, but that's not what I'm looking at. That's not, okay, what I'm looking at now, neck amulet, St. George, code K28, okay? Now, the website, the link is MOU. You got it? Okay, great. Okay, there you go. There you go, right there. And so then everything is code. Everything is by design. Now, remember at the beginning of this powerful broadcast, you had showed the flag or the insignia. There you go, of the three links. Okay. The three links, okay, of the Odd Fellowship Secret Society. Excellent. Go back. There you go, Jason. So everything is code. See, you and I are detailed historians and researchers. So George Floyd, St. George, Nancy Pelosi as the eye of the pyramid representing the rest of those Democrats, okay, kneeling down before the sign of St. George. I know this sounds crazy to the average American, but this is how these serpents are thinking, Jason. So the three circles at the top, three on the side, on right and left hand side, three at the bottom. Okay. Now the animal, now St. George, okay, is supposed to be on the horse. But according to the deep state, they think George Floyd represents that which is an animal that needs to be destroyed. I'm telling you how these devils think, Jason, as we're exposing the order, okay, the secret society of the Odd Fellowship Secret Society, okay? So these three circles, okay, chains represent friendship, Master Mason, love, Mark Mason, Master Mason, and truth, Holy Royal Ark Mason. Those Masons, they had their right hand or their left hand inside of their jacket pocket. Now, Jason, in my conclusion, if you get a chance also, type in the seal of the Order of St. George, St. Michael, the seal of the Order of St. Michael, okay? Now, this seal of the seal of St. Michael that is given by Queen Elizabeth, okay, a part of the House of Windsor, their real name is Saxe Goldberg, okay, of German dynastic blood descent. That's another topic for another day. So the Order of St. Michael has Michael's left foot on the neck. It looks like Lucifer, but they got the color of Lucifer is black. Jason, again, now people think, when I'm just picking this out of crap. No, this represents, okay, the thinking in the psyop of the deep state, okay?
Is this it here, so, Bishop?
No, well, that's one of them, but that's not, no, that's not. So the order, the seal of St. Michael, okay? So it shows the Archangel Michael having his left foot on the neck, okay? That's supposed to be the Archangel Lucifer, okay?
I think I got it here.
Here you go, yes. And so the Archangel Lucifer, and it's online as well, but when you go to the seal of St. Michael in color, it shows, and I'm not making this a black and white thing, it shows St. Michael as white, standing, but Lucifer as black.
They love stepping on the neck.
See, exactly. So in the psyop of the deep state, through the Order of the Odd Fellowship Secret Society, okay, and we don't know if George Floyd was connected to the international order of this secret society called Odd Fellows at 3003 South 27th Avenue South, Minneapolis. But the seal of St. Michael, Michael being white, having his left leg and foot on the neck of Lucifer, who they have as a black man. And again, when we talk about Lucifer, who is Satan the devil, Satan doesn't have a color, Jason. Satan, God, we know God is a spirit, right? And they that worship him must worship him in spirit and truth. So if you can find a color version of the order, the seal of St. Michael, it will even bring that out more powerful. So it shows a white angel, okay, on the neck of a black Lucifer. Lucifer doesn't have a color. As God is a spirit, Satan is a spirit, Jason. And so when we're talking about the death, the psyop of George Floyd, as we are ending volume 1 today of the Odd Fellowship of a Secret Society, both the seals of the state of Virginia and the seals of St. George and the seal of St. Michael point to what happened on the 25th of May, 2020, to an individual named Geore Floyd. Okay. And again, the everyday person may or may not even see this. Okay. This represents the psyop of what's in the thinking of the deep state as we are dissecting the end of the odd fellowship of a secret society, and which later produced the Grand United Order of Odd Fellows, which is the Black version of the Odd Fellowship Secret Society, okay? And the Grand United Order, okay, which goes back to 1798, that was created, okay, by Thomas Wilder, capital Wildey, okay? Some spell it capital Wildeg, Wildig, or some spell it capital Wildey. So Thomas Wildig or Wilder was a Grand Master, a 30-31 half degree Mason, not just of the Scottish Rite Order. He was a Grand Master who had created the Grand United Order, which is the Black equivalent of the Odd Fellowship Secret Society. A former slave owner created the Grand United Order of Fellowship, just like a 30-31 half degree Mason, okay, a general in the Union Army, right? General Gordon Granger, on the 19th of June in 1865, gave that declaration, right, at the behest of President Abraham Lincoln in Galveston, Texas, stating that all slaves, not all Black people, but all slaves were to be free. That's like saying that God is going to heal your cancer. No, God is not here in this generation to heal our cancer. God is here to heal the body from cancer. But notice the language. Thomas Wildey, thank you so much, capital Wildey. He was a 30-31 half degree, not just of the Scottish Rite Order in the York Rite Shire Order out of England, but he was also a Grand Master who created the Grand United Order of Odd Fellows. So
there's something else interesting about him, Bishop, that I think I should bring to your attention. I didn't know until right now. In his biography on Wikipedia, it's telling us that, he joined the British Odd Fellows in 1804, and then he emigrated to America 13 years later. The British were still unpopular in the United States because of the War of 1812, and Baltimore was suffering from a yellow fever epidemic and mass unemployment, which this picture of yellow fever looks exactly like coronavirus.
Isn't that interesting? Nothing is by accident. There's nothing new underneath the sun, as Solomon the king said thousands of years ago. Excellent viewpoint, Jason. And again, I'm getting a lot of emails from people stating that their minds are absolutely blown because of this order, the seal of St. Michael. And I'm not teaching victimhood. I'm not teaching black and white, but a white angel. The Bible never teaches that angels are white and demons are black. That is systemic racism that is so deep, not just in this country, but around the world. Why is the 8-ball black? Or why do we say black sheep? Everything dealing with black has a death connotation. Anything with white is purity. So then that, again, I don't normally teach this, Jason, a black and white connotation, but my assignment today, and I thank God that you called me the other night, Jason, to talk about this odd fellowship, as we're talking about the odd fellowship of a secret society, in my conclusion, that a white angel, and the Bible never teaches that angels are white and demons are black. It's left foot on the neck of Lucifer that they have portrayed as a black man. This points to both the historical pain and the weaponization of historical trauma, like I've been teaching your powerful audience for the past few weeks, as we are ending the odd fellowship of a secret society. The seal of St. George, the seal of St. Michael, in the seal of the state of Virginia, Jason. that goes to this Latin phrase, sic semper tyrannis, which is also the very last words, my friend, that John Wilkes Booth, there you go, gave to that audience after he had assassinated President Abraham Lincoln. Okay. And that is my conclusion today of volume. Jason, we haven't even got into other secret societies that's interconnected, okay, to this odd fellowship secret society. And let me say this real quickly before we end today, okay? There is a well-known doctor, okay, a Dr. Mudd, who had fixed, okay, the leg of John Wilkes Booth. Dr. Samuel Mudd, okay, who was also a member, okay, of the Maryland State Secret Society of Odd Fellows. Huh. He was the one, Dr. Samuel A. Mudd, who had set the broken leg of John Wilkes Booth of Booth. And Dr. Samuel A. Mudd and his wife had 33 grandchildren and great-grandchildren. There's your 33. Nothing is by accident.
Well, he was born in 1833.
Yeah, born 18. There you go. Born in 1833. So he was the one who was not only high up in the Maryland State, the odd secret society fellowship there in the state of Maryland, but he was the doctor that should have been tried for helping John Wilkes Booth. You see, John Wilkes Booth was a patsy. Okay, that's all John Wilkes Booth was. Okay, but Dr. Mudd, Samuel A. Mudd, was also a 33rd 1.5 degree Yorkshire Rite Mason, who was also high up in the Maryland State Order of this unknown secret society called the Odd Fellowship of the Secret Society. And that is the volume 1 today of the Odd Fellowship of a Secret Society.
Wow. Oh, I mean, Bishop, it's amazing because, again, when you don't really know anything about these things, I mean, everybody's heard about the Masons and everybody's got all kinds of different opinions, but like, it was just so strange to me when we were there in Norway. This building really jumped out at me, and I had never heard of them before this in January. And I didn't think really too much about it. You know, I just saw that. There's another thing I want to bring to your attention, Bishop, that I think connects. So the first thing that I did when I started finding out about this is that I wanted to see if there was an Odd Fellows order here in New York City. So I put it into the map, and there was an Odd Fellows order. It's closed. They have a building here on Grand Street. It's like 165 Grand Street or something like that. And it's like it's a pretty old building. It's from 18 whatever. But if we look at it, there's some interesting things we can see. It looks kind of, I haven't been down there. I'm going to go check this building out. I'm not sure what's going on. Maybe it's getting restored. It's got this scaffolding around it at the time that Google photographs it. And I was looking at some of these sculptures up here. It did have, let me see, where did I see that? It had like, you know, the 3 links on it somewhere, maybe closer to the top of it. But the part that I wanted to show you that was so interesting to me, take a look at what it's right across the street from. This is the old police station.
Wow. Oh, Jason.
So what do the police have to do with the Odd Fellows?
Thank you. And the question is, are they on the tape? Okay. Again, is there a big percentage of the present day Minneapolis Police Department a part of the Odd Fellowship Secret Society? And that's something that we're going to bring out in volume 2 next week. Again, Jason, you are absolutely blowing my mind, my friend, as we are dissecting. And now, also next week, we're going to get into, there are what they call Odd Fellows cemeteries, not only here in the States, but around the world. Dr. Martin Luther King is buried in the Odd Fellowship Cemetery.
Ooh.
They've
will bring always been linked to cemeteries from the beginning.
Absolutely. All of these Odd Fellowship secret society cemeteries, not just here in the United States, but around the world. General Robert E. Lee of the Confederacy was not only a 33 and 1.5 degree Yorkshire Mason, but he was a member of the Virginia State Odd Fellowship Secret Society. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And so Lincoln was assassinated 5 days after General Lee had succumbed to the North. Okay, had abdicated the power of the South to the North. So everything is by sequence, everything is by design. And Jason, everything that you pointed out today, even in symbols, and especially at the beginning there in Norway, that I'm telling you, my friend, you are bringing, and I love how we flow together. Okay.
Yeah.
And again, getting a lot of other emails from people stating the seal of the state of Virginia is absolutely blowing their minds. Okay. That they had no idea that these words, Cinque Semper Tyrannis, was the very same words that John Wilkes Botha Booth used after he assassinated President Abraham Lincoln. The Odd Fellowship of a Secret Society. Very powerful, powerful show today.
I agree. This is definitely something for us to continue to learn more about. There's certain links between the Odd Fellows and the Masons. It seems like there were times in history that they were kind of close, and other times in history where there was a separation. I mean, it caused me to wonder. It's sort of like there was like a big lawsuit against R.J. Reynolds, and then they renamed the company like Alteria or something like very like made up word that doesn't make you think about cigarettes and dying. And I was thinking, like, there was that thing that you spoke about against the societies in England back in the day. I mean, if you are part of a secret society that gets a bad reputation, maybe you start a new secret society under a different name so that people don't know it's still you.
Exactly. And this is what that Anti-Secret Society Act in England in 1799 that was enacted into law by the conservative section of the British Parliament. I believe secret societies have to be outlawed in the United States. That's never going to happen. But I'm just saying that the psyop of global historical secret societies, when we talk even about the Bilderberg, the Trilateral Commission, the Club of Rome, the Committee of 300, the Hidden Hand, okay, the Scottish Rite, Yorkshire Rite Masonic Order, including the Odd Fellows from the Odd Fellowship Secret Society. It's all from left-wing communist thinking people historically. And there is no benefit of joining any type of secret society, because that term secret is rooted in the term that which is occultic or occultism. And before we close out, the father of John Wilkes Booth, Junius Brutus Booth, both Junius Brutus Booth O'Botha and his son John Wilkes Booth was in a play called Junius Brutus. Okay, now going back in Roman Empire history, going back to as early as 509 BCE, before the Common Era, which also gave birth to the Roman Republic. There was one of their last kings by the name of Lucius Junius Brutus. Okay. Now, the term Lucius is a Roman dynamic of the term Lucifer, okay? Lucius Junius Brutus. Now, a descendant of Lucius Junius Brutus was a man by the name of Marcus Junius Brutus, who was a part of the assassination plot to assassinate Julius Caesar.
Wow.
On the March in 44 BC, before Christ. Julius Caesar was set up with assassination by a descendant of Junius Brutus. This young man by the name of Marcus Junius Brutus, a descendant of Lucius Junius Brutus, okay, had set up Julius Caesar to be assassinated on the 15th of March during the year of 44 BC. And then hundreds and thousands of years later, then you had Junius Brutus Booth Botha gives birth to John Wilkes Botha Booth, and they both are stage actors, okay, on a stage through the play Junius Brutus. It cannot be by accident as
No.
we are dissecting the odd fellowship of a secret society.
Yeah, and I think that people are zeroing in on this now, Bishop, because there's a lot of people asking questions. It's almost difficult for me to keep up. We've got many viewers today, and I want to thank everybody for watching, but also remind people that they can listen to you, Bishop, on liferadionj.com/Gaiters, and if they're in the New York and New Jersey area, they can get you on 92.9 FM. I know that radio is pretty outdated technology and many people maybe haven't even used it in a long time, but you've got to be physically close to the radio station. If you're in another state, 92.9 FM will be another radio station and the Bishop might not be on it. But you can always tune into liferadionj.com/Gaiters and listen to the show. I also do like to encourage people to support the Bishop and his global spiritual revolution. You can do that by going to paypal.me/GSRR Media Group. And it's also important for people to sponsor this show at patreon.com/crowdsourcethetruth and subscribestar.com/crowdsourcethetruth. We're going to have another sponsor exclusive show tonight at 8 p.m. That's going to be More Pain with True Pundit editor Mike Moore. Bishop, Mike's been very focused on the counterfeiting aspect there in Minneapolis as well. I just can't get it out of my head that it makes no sense to counterfeit $1 bills unless you have this nationwide infrastructure or even citywide infrastructure of check cashing businesses with which you can kind of launder those bills. Because if you gave, $2, $3, $4 $1 bills to every person that came into your place, almost nobody would notice that. So in some regards, it's a perfect way of stealing millions of dollars. Also, in researching some of this stuff for today's show, I've learned a lot about what's going on in Minneapolis, and it seems like there's a lot of corruption there. There's a lot of money laundering and theft and charities that are sending money even to terrorist organizations. And there's one other important thing that came up. I want to recommend just one more time that documentary that's created by, I don't know who runs this channel, In Pursuit of Truth. I would like to find out. It's a very good documentary, and I'd love to interview this person who made this. But people who haven't seen the video yet should go over to In Pursuit of Truth on YouTube and look at this Weathermen 3. We haven't even touched on, in this episode at least, Bishop, the Weather Underground and all of that sort of stuff.
And
But
Jason, can I
just,
say this really
yeah.
quickly too? One of the symbols of the Odd Fellowship Secret Society is a palm with the heart in the middle of the palm. Okay.
Oh,
now,
yeah.
remember we talked about this foundation out of California Little Kids, capital KIDZE.
Right.
And they have a project called the Heart Touch Project. If you type in the Heart Touch Project on Google Images, it will show, a right or left hand with the heart in the middle. That is one of the symbols of the pedophilia underground network that the FBI exposed a couple of years ago, along with the miniature pyramids on the head of Dwayne Wade. Wow. There you go.
And it's got the swirl in there also. Wow.
Yes. And so everything is by facts. And I love, because Jason, you're teaching me as well. We have to come clean and true and be true to the people. So then that heart, the Heart Touch Project with the heart in the middle of the palm is not only one of the symbols that was declassified by the FBI a few years ago as being one of those symbols that the underground pedophilia network uses, not just in this country, but around the world. And that's a part of the Little Kids, capital KIDZ project, Little Kids Foundation, which Adam Shifty Schiff is a board member. And so that hand with the heart on the palm is one of the main symbols or insignias of the Odd Fellowship Secret Society that's connected to pedophilia. Nothing is by accident as we're talking about the Odd Fellowship of a Secret Society.
And historically, Bishop, what I've been learning is that they've run charities and orphanages and things. There's a pretty actually heavy focus on orphanages. I'm not saying anything about that. But the one last thing I wanted to leave you with, Bishop, because this is also super interesting, and I forgot to mention it. You know, since our last show, the Minneapolis police have released, I haven't heard it, but there's a transcript of the 911 phone call that the owner of Cup Foods made to the cops after George Floyd spent this $20 counterfeit bill. And it's interesting to note that, you know, Google has pretty quickly updated their Google Earth here. Obviously, you know, this is since the death of George Floyd. Cup Foods now is a memorial to the guy.
Yes.
But in the transcript of the phone call, the owner of Cup Foods says we get a lot of counterfeit bills because we're a check cashing business. And as we come around the corner here, we can see Cup Foods has a Western Union sign there. So there's all these sort of financial services that are more geared towards less established people who maybe don't have bank accounts, maybe don't have that much money, so they're being taken advantage of. And you can't really see it that easily now that all of this memorial stuff is in front of it, but there's a mosque underneath Cup Foods. It says Masjid something Islam, and you can see the stairs leading down there.
And again, Jason, you have such a great eye for detail, things I wouldn't be able to pick up. And because what's coming to my mind as well, for your listeners, if I can give them a homework assignment, go to Minnesota Freemasons. Just type in Minnesota Freemasons, or that link is mn-masons.org. mn-masons.org, okay? And their address is 11501 Masonic Home Drive. They're connected to the Odd Fellowship Secret Society at 3303 27th Avenue South, Minneapolis, Minnesota. And the question we have to ask ourselves, and maybe I could have an answer for you guys next week, was George Floyd connected to any lodge or incubation, okay? Was George Floyd connected to any lodge in Minneapolis, okay, or in the state of Minnesota that was interconnected to the Odd Fellows, to the Odd Fellowship Secret Society? Because the tattoo on his chest is one of the main insignias of the Odd Fellowship Secret Society. And that cannot be by accident, Jason.
No. I think you got to put a lot of thought into getting a gigantic thing tattooed on your chest.
Yes. And I have to tell you, Jason, as a quick side note, this has been, I keep beating a dead horse, but you have some of the best listeners I've ever been a part of in 25 years of radio ministry. And you have one of the most powerful outlets in America and around the world today. And I thank God for you, Jason, and me being a part of the Crowdsource the Truth team, okay? And exposing this odd fellowship of a secret society that's not well known to many Americans here in the United States and around the world. So Volume 2 is going to be absolutely mind-blowing next Tuesday.
Absolutely. And Bishop, thank you for those kind words. It's a pleasure to have you with us. And your show has become so popular and teaching me a ton of stuff that I really know nothing about until you've brought it to our attention. Mel Chapman is saying that Stephen Jackson is a Freemason. And you know, I got to tell you, I've been watching a lot more videos like this. When I first looked at Stephen Jackson, I didn't think he looked like George Floyd at all. But now that I've seen a lot of different videos of him, he actually does look like George Floyd quite a bit, like they could be brothers.
And you know what, Jason? And again, that listener is absolutely right. Stephen Jackson is a Prince Hall Mason. His father, the late George Alterich, was a Prince Hall Mason. And then next week, I'll definitely present those pictures to you of Mr. George Aldrich, who was the father of Stephen Jackson. And Stephen Jackson had said on Instagram 3 weeks before the death of his friend, George Floyd, whom he called his twin, had said that there are going to be white cops taking out black men. This is 3 weeks before the death of George Floyd. And also Stephen Jackson shows the Masonic garments that his father left to him. And so, again, the On Fellowship of a Secret Society. And to your listeners, they can also listen to us on both the iHeartRadio network and the iHeart Media Group as well on a global international level. And again, this is mind-blowing information today, Jason. I'm looking forward to next week to volume 2 of the Odd Fellowship of a Secret Society. Very powerful.
As am I, Bishop. And I want to remind people that they can follow you on Twitter at Bishop L. Gaiters and stay abreast of your other interviews. You're doing a lot of work all over social media, not just here on Crowdsource the Truth. And Bishop, you've reminded me of one more thing that I definitely want to share with you. This happened yesterday, and this is pretty interesting. I was out on a walk just kind of evaluating the wanton destruction of New York City. And as I got close back to my apartment, I passed a guy on the street who expressed that he wanted to speak to me. If you have a minute, I'd like to play this for you and the audience, because what had happened earlier in this broadcast is that the live stream got cut off. And what I've taken to doing when my live streams walking around New York City interrupt, when they encounter some interruption, I put the full stream up on patreon.com/crowdsourcethetruth and subscribestar.com/crowdsourcethetruth. And Bishop, I do that for a couple of reasons. First of all, I want to say thank you to the people that sponsor the show and make it possible for me to bring all these great guests to everybody, including yourself. Without the sponsors, I would not be able to do that. And it is also important for people to sponsor you on paypal.me/GSRR Media Group. But the other reason that I do it, Bishop, is because if there is somebody out there using an IMSI catcher or some other sort of radio equipment with the deliberate intention of interfering with my broadcasts, I want to turn that into an opportunity for viewers to counteract that malicious behavior by financially supporting Crowdsource the Truth every time they try to take it down. Because that's their goal, to ruin it. And if we can turn it against them, seems like a great method. Let me play this brief interview for you, and I'm curious to hear what you have to say about it.
Yes, sir.
To improve progress.
Progress?
Yeah, we need progress. So I think progress is going to be manifested because of the people experience, different experience that they go through this past few months.
You sound like you have an accent. Are you from Trinidad or something?
Yes, I'm from the Caribbean, and I hope that the progress that we gain is going to be, for the benefit of the world, which is going to be international.
How long have you lived in New York?
I live in New York for a long time, over about, let me say, 25 years.
Wow. So are you a citizen of the United States?
Citizen, yeah.
Was that a difficult process to become a citizen?
No, it was not a difficult process. But what happened is, I'm so glad that America is improving and the people is recognizing that, we should lift up to a different level of consciousness.
I noticed you're wearing a Mason ring. Are you a Boule?
Well, a Mason ring is representing, the spiritual consciousness. And all the Mason ring is really originated from Egypt. It's there where the scriptures come from.
Uh-huh.
The only spiritual text upon the face of the earth is the scriptures.
Are you part of the Prince Hall, Masonic Hall in...
Well, what happened is the scriptures represent the spiritual values.
Uh-huh.
So we have to recognize that by our learning, how we preserve in Egypt.
Uh-huh. Can I take a picture of the ring? Is that allowed?
Oh yeah, of course. You can take a picture of the ring.
So what do you think? What do we got there? You got one from the Masons, and what's this one with the bird on it?
Look at the bird.
What is that
Bishop.
bird?
Yes.
The bird is the eagle.
Uh-huh.
The eagle represents a power, a spiritual power, also,
Uh-huh.
everything is rising, So the eagle represents much power.
Are you on the 33rd level of the Masonic Hall?
Something like that.
You are?
Yeah, everything is knowledge. You have to understand the knowledge that was preserved in Egypt. Egypt was the place where everything was preserve, and they took it and what we to our consciousness, the knowledge, the spiritual knowledge, the spiritual values.
You know, I'm Jewish, and when I grew up in Hebrew school, they taught us that Jews were enslaved in ancient Egypt. Is that true?
No, I don't believe the Jews were enslaved in ancient Egypt. It was the people that was enslaved in ancient Egypt, I think, was the people from Africa.
Oh,
You know, from Africa. Well, the Jews represent what you call a spiritual values that, you know, we have to recognize.
there's a lot of Jews in Ethiopia, aren't there? African Jews in Ethiopia?
Yes, yes, you're right. And they also Jews come from what you call part of mountains, you know.
Assad?
He became a little bit confused there towards the end, Bishop, and he did smell like he had been drinking, but I thought it was an interesting encounter. People can watch the whole thing on Patreon and Subscribestar. What do you think about what that guy said?
Well, that ring that has that eagle, that's
Yes.
one of the symbols of the Hermetic order of the Golden Dawn. And that's one of the symbols that stood out to me, besides the Masonic symbol. So the Hermetic order of the Golden Dawn, Kobe Bryant was heavy into that as well. Okay. And so this is what, and you notice he got real quiet. When you asked him about, was he on the 33-degree level?
Yeah.
He said something.
Something
He really
like
didn't
that.
want to get it.
Right.
Yeah. So they're so secretive. Okay. He did not want to get into that. But you talking about Masonic, there are at least 1,200 Masonic temples in the Dominican Republic alone, alone. And we're not even talking about other countries like Jamaica, and I believe there's 23 in Jamaica, 21 in Barbados, 20 in Guyana in South Africa. South America, 20 in Guyana, South America. I think 14, 20 in Trinidad, in Tobago. So he's kind of skipping around when you ask him.
Trinidadian, didn't he? His accent?
Right. He's Trinidadian and Tobagan. So then they're so secretive. And I'm surprised that he even showed you his rings. I mean, but the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn, that's the one with the heart or the red color in the middle of that eagle that's looking not to the east, is looking to the west. Just like the eagle on the seal of the Central Intelligence Agency is not looking to the east, to the left, is looking to the right, going to the west, the Western Hemisphere. Okay, so he is either high up in the Masonic order or he's not telling the full truth. I think he is telling the truth, but he doesn't want you to know at what level, whether it's the 33rd degree level. So he's, so excellent questions that you were asking him, and especially about the Jews in Egypt, I think he kind of got confused there. Yeah,
because I think everybody in Egypt is African, aren't they? It's in Africa.
Yeah. Well, they for some reason they want to put Egypt into the Middle East. No, Egypt is not in the Middle East. And you know me, I don't call the continent Africa, because the original name of the continent was not named Africa, but Egypt. The Coptic interpretation for the term Egypt is Kemet, right? Capital K-E-M-I-T or E-T, Kemet Nu. That's a Coptic interpretation. So for some reason, historians had put Egypt into the Middle East. No, Egypt is in northwestern Akibaland that we call Africa. So interesting conversation with that Caribbean Masonic. And you know what? He didn't tell you. He kind of scooted around. When you asked him, was he a Prince Hall Mason? He kind of danced around that question, or was he a Boule? He didn't answer that,
Correct.
So, yeah.
I knew you'd like that, Bishop. And the thing is, that guy just was sort of making I was walking up the street and he politely made conversation with me. I just noticed the ring on his finger as he was sitting there talking to me.
And again, all Black Masons around the world, the highest order that they can go to is the 33rd degree. That's the highest order. Because anything after that, they have to be in the bloodline of not just the 9 Knights of the Round Table. And I'm getting some emails as we speak. They're saying, well, Bishop explained the 9 Knights of the Round Table. There are scholars that say
day, I think.
Right, right. So there are 9 Knights around the round table between the Rothschilds to the Lee family. Well, they're asking me, where are the remaining 4 families? Each of the remaining 4 families are protecting the 4 corners of the Knights of the Round Table. This thing is strategic. It is demonically organized, what I call the compartmentalization of darkness. So these knights of not just the 9 of the 13 Illuminati families, but the remaining 4 are the 4 international protectors from the 4 corners of the earth that are protecting the powers of the 9 families. And the only reason why that Black people are in secret societies is because they have been given permission, Jason, by the 13 Illuminati families. That's the only reason why. Okay. And I hate to break it to Black people, but Prince Hall Masonry, okay, the United Order of the Odd Fellowship Secret Society, the Black African-centric section of the Odd Fellowship Secret Society, and there's another degree I didn't even talk about today called the degree of Rebecca, or the Rebeccan.
Oh yeah, the women of the Odd Fellows.
Women. Oh
we
yes,
got so much to talk about on this, Bishop. I think this is going to be a lengthy series.
Yes, it's going to be a lengthy series, and I'm excited about it. Thank you so much, my friend.
And thank you, Bishop. We'll be back next week. I'll be back later tonight, as I said. Thanks for watching, everybody. Really appreciate it. And Bishop, I'll speak to you soon.
See you next week, my friend, for Volume 2 of the Odd Fellowship of a Secret Society.
Absolutely.